a tendency to scream really loud. So his mom has started saying, "Can you please sing with your mouth closed?" So, is that working?
I think so.
All right.
Remember what's on the left.
That's right. Talk like there's no mic. I didn't want to be like screaming into it, but if
you're talking to them back there without the mic,
then I'm good enough. All right. Good morning. How are you? So I heard you're going to be traveling again soon.
Maybe, yeah.
Anywhere fun?
Yeah, I'm going to Montreal.
Oh, wonderful. Okay, that's great. I have actually never been.
Oh, I've been there a few times.
Okay. That was really amazing how beautiful it is up in
Uh-huh.
very lovely. Uh-huh.
So what did you do? Work.
Uh-huh. Basically, that's how I do work. You know, I can move on here, and I tap my foot, and that microphone is buzzing.
So, well, then don't do that.
Well,
does the tone of that seat change if you move or sit up and stand up? Or stay the same way? Yeah, I mean, if you're close to this mic and you're, all touching the floor, that's gonna happen.
Okay.
Because the mic is there on the floor.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will try not to tap my foot.
And when our budget increases quite a bit, we'll get things to put the lights in that will prevent that.
Okay.
But that's not going to happen for a while.
Okay.
You're going to put a light on the side. Well, that would be nice too, but I was going to have the lights float in a bunch of rubber band type thing that doesn't pick up the thoughts and stuff. So is that like when you put a sock over the mic? No, this is in a lot of recording studios. You'll see the mic, and it's kind of like in a cage with all these rubber bands. Yeah, that's the type of thing I'm talking about. So it's right. So that when whatever the mic is attached to, when that is touched, it doesn't transfer over into the mic itself.
No, I didn't do anything exciting except work. I said I didn't do anything exciting except work.
I had a really weird thing. It's funny when I called Kansas. Told me that they found a mattress closure. 1993 or closure. I said, "Is that started?" He said, "I'll check." So we got back to it. And then they said, "It does have a start." Your office. It does have a start, but that doesn't mean that it's the wrong mode. Because starting in 1907, so we put the flywheel
people. And there was a place where Malcolm started. So you had to buy it as a house. So there was a belief over the whole way to start with people. So another brother of mine up here in Alton, who has a dozen his wife died about 3 years ago. So, 4 years ago. So, he went out to celebrate by buying 4 more months. So, he only went 8, now he's got a dozen.
Okay.
So, he takes his Dutch and threw it out for a while. The wheel falls off. And he skids to the stop of the back road. And the farmer sees this happen. Comes out. What's happening is that spindle hole. Farmer has another spindle hole. They did up all wheels. And when the rollback comes, they will roll it up to the rollback. Pull the fender off, pull the running board off. So, he takes it back home, rolls it off, starts it up, backs it into his garage, and repair it. And I show him. And he's all angry at himself. Because before he left on this trip, he noticed that his video was down about that. He should have realized that that's a fact. So I get over there just in time to help him find the parts he needs to unused. We're all looking at all this stuff. And I read the next day I see this 1990 sitting down. We got it back together, and down in Bravest, and selling it. So, yesterday, I go by his house.
What'd you make it? I can come to you, it's easier.
With number 13 on the back. He had told me he was going to look in the brass and try some parts that didn't need. But he decided that he was going to buy this roasting instead. And I arrived I didn't know anything about it. I arrived just as he had it done. Just got on the highway. He was tired. Wore out, drive all over the house. So I said to him, your wife's rolling over in her foot. And he says, I got to go do something. I got it. So you have to wait. So we got in the house. I went call he come and help me. The doctor come right out. And the sun is shining. So he called me every day. He said, well,
Well, good morning, everyone, to all of you that are here in the sanctuary of the First Unitarian Church of Alton, and greetings to everyone who is in your jammies watching us remotely. That is always a wonderful thing. I am serving as both the worship associate and our speaker today. My pronouns are she or they. I'm Claudia Hall, and I have served this community in many roles, and I hope will continue to serve in many roles as the years go on. We welcome everyone today to this home of comfort, spirit, justice, and hope, for we are Unitarian Universalists. We open our service this morning with a prelude by our accompanist, Joy Heth. An important ritual in our Unitarian Universalist faith is the lighting of our chalice. We have many different interpretations of the flaming chalice, including the light of reason, the warmth of community, and the flame of hope. I invite you to join me in celebrating all of these reasons and more. If you are watching elsewhere and you have a chalice or candle, please feel free to light it now and join with us in saying the words that are on your screen. We hallow this time together by kindling the lamp of our heritage. Well, good morning, everyone. We are gathered here for so many reasons, and in the midst of so much grief, anger, rage, and sorrow for many of us. Whatever you are here for today, I hope that you find some comfort, some connection, and some hope today. As we begin our service together, I invite you to join with me as you are willing and able in a spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, we gather today as a people seeking shelter from the storm. Each and every one of us present has something, maybe many things, that are weighing us down. Health and finances, relationship problems, a world full of war and violence, both here at home and abroad. May those of us that are gathered here today, whether in person or virtually, find in the faces and hearts of these surrounding us the strength, courage, and hope to carry on for another day. May we experience an inner peace beyond the turmoil of our day, and may we find here the people and the values that can give our lives hope and meaning. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you all to remain seated where you are and to join us in our opening hymn, number 34 in the gray hymnal, Though I May Speak with Bravest Fire. It is a tradition here at the First UU Church of Alton to place each service in the larger sources and principles that we as UUs hold dear. While we are a religion that has no requirement of creed or belief, we do have things that we support overall. And the service today comes straight out of our first and second principles. First, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And secondly, we support the idea that justice, equity, and compassion belong in human relations. Where do I even begin to try and link our current situation with these principles that we think are so universal? We are living in a time when these two things, these sacred cores of our faith, are being shaken around the world. The exploitation of resources, climate change, civil wars across the globe, Russia's horrific invasion of Ukraine, and here at home, a court system that seems insistent on enshrining injustice and misogyny, especially an intense hatred of Black, brown, female, and trans bodies. It is so easy right now to collapse in despair and throw our hands up. Some of you have been fighting against these injustices your entire lives, and the idea that the fighting is continuing with no end in sight is something that is both enraging and depressing. This work that we do is hard, and we may not even be fighting anymore for ourselves, but for the generations who come after us. We must not let religious extremists claim that they represent every person of faith. However you are able to engage in this work, these principles and values are not just abstractions. Right now, they are life jackets in a world that is flooded with despair. May we cling to these and in so doing, find salvation from religious extremism. Amen. As part of our weekly worship service today, we take time for an expression of joys, concerns, and sorrows. There are electric candles up front, and I invite everyone who needs to light a candle of hope today, or a candle of joy, a candle of sorrow or concern, to come forward and practicing your social distancing and light a candle and just leave it in the tray as a visual reminder to each of us of all the things that make up our service. I invite you to take a moment for meditation as we do. Our next hymn this morning is number 121 in the Gray Hymnal, We'll Build a Land. It'll also be projected on the wall. Good morning, everyone. I say that not as a banal platitude or as an expected greeting, but because I truly do believe that every morning we wake up alive can be a good one. Everything that happens to us is most assuredly not good, but there can be good mind out of things despite the horrors of the world that we live in. I don't normally have grandiose titles for my sermon, but this month I titled mine, When There Is No Justice, What Jews and Enslaved People Can Teach Us About Living Under Legal Horror. And I'm going to mine both of these traditions for what we can hold to when the systems we have relied upon fall apart, as they have here in America today. For over 2,000 years, Jews were actually not citizens of the countries that they lived in. They paid taxes, often at higher rates than the actual citizens, but they had no legal status, no protection for who they were. This meant that any time a noble or a dictator wanted to, the Jews could be rounded up, stripped of all their wealth, and murdered without anyone standing up on their behalf. This happened with such frightening frequency that we actually have a word for it, pogrom, which comes specifically from the genocidal acts that were repeatedly committed on the Jews. Every day they lived their lives with the knowledge that at every moment they could lose everything, including their lives. And yet somehow they survived and flourished as a people despite the constant shunning, hatred, and genocide. Enslaved people around the world, but especially here in America, were forced to work in horrific conditions, and they were unable to control their own bodies or create their own homes. And yet, they managed to have hope and happiness stolen away from those who owned them. I put that in air quotes because the law said they were property, but I do not and never will believe that humans should be property. Neither of these groups wanted to be treated as they were, and both were treated in such horrific ways that language truly does fail to describe their circumstances. The legacy of such trauma endures and continues to shape these people in a wide variety of ways. And nobody on earth has yet gone to the effort of doing what it takes to end this kind of generational trauma. I am not making light of the suffering of either the Jewish people around the world or of the enslaved people that were here in America. Nor am I saying that the situations they endured are completely equal to what we face today. But I do know that learning from the past is the only way to quit repeating it. And I know that our ancestors offer us ways to be better or worse as human beings if we just take the time to listen to their stories. So in that vein, what are some things that both of these tormented groups in history can offer us who are grieving and staggered by the severe reversals of rights the current courts seem determined to hand down? Technically, I know that this is a church in Illinois, but I know many of us, myself included, live on the Missouri side of that border, and currently a firearm has more rights than I do. Survival is crucial, and that can mean passing. Second, know your escape routes. Third, allies in power are required. The people who are oppressed cannot do all the work themselves. And fourth, living your life and celebrating is an act of protest. To begin, both Jews and enslaved people knew that survival was the most important thing. Where there is life, there is hope, and as a result, both groups created elaborate structures to enable them to pass in society. Passing in this context, it's a thing that comes up a lot in queer discussions, but it happens in various contexts. It's when you are able to disguise yourself as someone in the dominant society while actually being a persecuted minority. Passing is incredibly complex, and it takes an enormous emotional, mental, and physical toll on the people who are doing it. But sometimes it is the only way to survive. Passing can be something small, such as ignoring comment because you need your job, or not engaging in a political discussion with your neighbor that you know does not feel your way. It can also be something all-consuming, such as the Jewish people who publicly converted to Christianity, were baptized and went to Mass every Sunday, but kept Shabbat on Friday night. When it comes to avoiding death, you do what you have to do. Whatever kind of oppression you are facing, only you can know when passing is a necessary survival skill. But it is one that gets used by oppressed people in all kinds of situations. And it's done because you need to survive in a society that is hostile. I've seen discussions lately about people saying that, passing is morally corrupt, or it's not being authentic, or it's not being true to yourself. What these folks don't always realize is that passing behavior is what happens when society is dishonest and morally corrupt. When society won't let me live in the life that I need to be authentic, I have to fake it, I have to hide, I have to pass, because it's the only way to keep myself or others safe. This is hard emotional labor, and it causes a profound amount of soul exhaustion. So people generally only do it because being themselves is more dangerous. I bring this up in this context because the Supreme Court opinion penned by Clarence Thomas explicitly says that all rights to privacy need to be revisited, including the right to contraception and the right to same-sex marriage, among other things. I know that I find this absolutely abhorrent, and I believe that our principles as UUs decry this legal destruction of rights as a violation of our religious freedom. However, I am also powerless to change what the Supreme Court does, so you better believe, as a queer person in this time and place, that I am polishing up on my passing skills in case it's the only way to keep my family safe. Just as Jews around the world pretended to be Muslim or Christian to survive, many queer families and trans folks, among others, are doing what they have to stay safe in these times. Seeing this as a survival tactic that our ancestors taught us does not mean this is an ideal thing, right? I'm not saying that the best way to live is to pass. I'm saying sometimes it's what you have to do to survive. It teaches us that when the law is against you, sometimes passing is the best out of a group of bad options. But what about when you can't pass or you're afraid of being outed? The second thing that both Jews and enslaved peoples teach us today is that we've got to know our escape routes. If you are a human being that has a uterus in America today, you need to be on some kind of long-term birth control. You need, whether or not you're in a relationship, you need to know your escape route. What would happen if some horrific circumstance occurred and you had an unintended pregnancy? Every single person with a uterus and everyone who loves them, everyone who has friends or family members, everybody's got somebody in this state right now, right? We need to know our plan. What is your plan to not have a pregnancy? What is your plan to deal with it if you have one and your state says you are a criminal? You need to know. You can't wait until the police are raiding us to decide how to react. We all have to know our escape routes. The fall of Roe versus Wade is a tornado siren screaming at us that justice in this country only applies to white, upper-class, rich men. Everybody else needs an escape. You got to have a disaster plan for if, not when. No, I said that backwards. For when, not if, you are on the wrong end of a broken justice system. You know, for many of us, we have had this right our entire lives, or at least our entire sexually active lives. This is a big deal, and it's not just us, it's our kids and our grandkids. Everyone has someone in this position. If you're in Illinois, you're lucky. You can still have safe and legal abortion procedures, but that can change with a governmental flick of a pen. We have to know our escape routes. This is exhausting. It is absolutely understandable if you are overwhelmed, anxious, and ready to give up. For those of us that are living paycheck to paycheck, the idea of having an emergency fund is just one more thing. It's the straw that breaks the camel's back. I'm not saying that you need to have a plan for every possible way that the law can break and come against you, because plans, frankly, don't survive contact with reality. But knowing where your escape routes are, knowing who you can trust, can free you from the fear of what if that is hounding many of us. I recently completed my yearly training at Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital, where I serve as a parent advocate. And unfortunately, there was a whole scenario about what you have to do in the case of active violence. Because we have glorified toxic masculinity in our culture, we now all run the risk, no matter where we are, of being in a situation of violence. The fact is that the injustices of the court are also violence against our bodies every day. It may not be as immediate, and it may not be as big a thing in our brains, but these injustices are absolutely something that applies, whether it's an injustice of the court or a violent shooter in a place of worship or in a hospital. These are the things you need to do. Run away if you can, hide if you can't, and know where the escape routes are. Very few of us in this building today have the resources to run away from the entire United States. I know every time our justice system breaks a little further, all the websites for Canada and other places crash. But the frank reality is most of us we just can't afford to up and leave. So know who your friends are in abortion-friendly and queer-friendly, trans-friendly states. Know where the people that you trust stand on these issues. And if somebody says something like, well, it's not that big a deal, maybe it's time to find a new set of friends. Because even if it doesn't affect you today, it affects someone you love. It affects your friends that happen to live across a river. It happens to the people that you care about. Again, this is more important for knowledge for us in Missouri than in Illinois. But you know, First UU Alton may very well be called upon to a new kind of underground railroad work, helping women to get the health care that they deserve because they're human beings with infinite worth and dignity. Third thing we need to know as the courts erase rights from over half our population is that we need to know that we need allies in power in order to progress. We rightly honor the brave people who sought freedom from slavery and ran away. But the fact is that they would not have succeeded in courts of law without the support of powerful white abolitionists. It's just a fact that systems are created and they endure to keep people in power who are already in power. So it takes those people in power being sympathetic to the injustices of others before change really happens. Now, this is hard because people with power don't want to share it usually. So making sure that people who support our values as Unitarian Universalists get into power is really important. It's also really, really hard to do because of gerrymandering and voter suppression laws that continue to make it even more difficult for the most vulnerable to get out and vote. So what is important for us today, sitting here, whether we're watching online or whether we're here in the pews, we need to help oppressed people get to the ballot box. That's what we need to do. We need to vote for candidates that support our values as a liberal, inclusive, equality-driven, and progressive religion. We have to know that nothing will change as long as we don't get people in power who want change. What happens when we get laws that are beneficial, when we get laws that are progressive, when we get these things enshrined in the Constitution, it's because we did the work at the ground level to put people in power who supported those values. Far too often, I run into people who are moderate to liberal, and they say, well, there's just problems with both parties. That's true. There's an awful lot of corruption in both parties. But there are some people who may have some issues with Washington. You know, they may be part of that cesspool up there. But they actually think that everyone in the country deserves rights. And then there's people up there that think only a few people in the country deserve rights. It's up to us to decide who we want in those offices and to work with groups that are getting out the vote, to work with people who need a ride to the ballot box. If you're going to go vote anyway, make sure your elderly neighbor who's progressive can get there. Make sure that a black or brown person or a trans person is able to go safely and vote. Just as many of us in the state of Missouri used to escort women to the abortion clinics, now we have to escort people to the ballot box because it's just as dangerous for them. I was like, am I running over? Oh my gosh. All right. I am on fire. This matters. And not to me. I lost my uterus. Thanks be to the heavens. I'm gone with that. I don't have to worry about it. But you know what? I have a child. I have a little boy, and I want him to grow up knowing that he can have a healthy and happy sex life. And if he and his partner have an unplanned pregnancy, that they can get medical care. I want the people that I work with to know if they have an ectopic pregnancy, that they won't be forced to bleed to death, that they'll be able to get the medical care they need. Healthcare matters. Access to healthcare matters. Access to these clinics. Yes, it is easy.